consider. So payment processing, I will say, is one of the most confusing things I've ever tried to navigate. It doesn't have to be that complex, but I'm going to try to simplify it so that it's not too scary for you. What you want to do when you're selecting a payment processor is you want to look to your software provider's partner list. The payment processor is the company that actually does the transaction for you. It accepts the Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, whatever payment method you want to use. It accepts it and does the transaction for you online. And you have to have that payment processor set up with your software provider in order to take transactions like a pledge from someone in New York who wants to support someone walking in California. They want to give their credit card, their Visa, to pay a $100 pledge, and you need to be able to transact that easily online. And there's some glue that holds the software platform and the payment processor together. So you want to make sure that you're working off of that preferred list. So you will be looking at potentially two different types of payment processors. One is specifically the payment processor. This is the person that has the relationship with the merchant, you being the merchant, and does the transaction with the merchant and hands off money to the merchant, so to the school. Allows that transaction to happen on the web. Sometimes these are both these purposes are served under one provider, and sometimes they're separate. So these are things to look at. Really, you need to look at the cost analysis, though. It's important that you compare the options, and there are so many different levels of cost that can be included with the payment processor. You want to be very well aware of them before you jump into it. Hard costs I would consider are setup and cancellation and monthly fees. These are the things that are one-time cost or a repeating cost. The variable costs, of course, are based on transactions. So the interchange fee, which is the percent that you pay on the pledge amount, is important, and that can change from Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, and some providers offer a flat rate. So these are the types of things you need to look at in detail to compare and really see which payment processor is the best for you. One that I will point out to you is something that's happened as of January 1st, is some of the payment processors are charging, sometimes as a pass-through, a compliance cost for that PCI compliance. Be aware of any extra costs before you step into a relationship with a payment processor. And then, of course, you want to understand the full payment schedule. Anything that might cost your school money to transact these online, you want to know going into it so that you can really evaluate those costs and make sure you're prepared. It's not that scary of a process, but it's important that you look at all the details before you step into it. All right, so we've qualified software providers, we've qualified payment processors. Now that you have the costs down and you know which direction you'd like to head in, it's really important that you create a financial plan. I suggest this for anyone doing any kind of business, nonprofit or for-profit. So you want to look at key variables. Take a look at how you think you'll do this year in your campaign versus last year. If you have, in fact, done a walkathon before, it's important to look at how many participants you had last year, how many pledges you got, or the amount of the pledges you got, and compare that to what you think you'll do this year. Keep in mind, when you're looking at doing pledges online versus the old way of offline, you can see a lift of anywhere from 2 to 4 times that pledge amount from going offline to online. So, for example, if you have a student that had that participated last year and your only option was to participate by getting paper pledges, then you offer them the option to go online this year. If they made $50 last year on their pledges, you could potentially see them do in excess of $100 on pledges this year because of adding the online capabilities. These are things to consider as you're creating your financial plan. Also, sponsorships. Have you done sponsorships in the past? They're very easy to administer online, especially with the Doojiggee tool. And sponsorships can really be a source of great funds. So consider that. Either add that in as a new area of fundraising for you, or consider that by adding a little bit more usability and ease of doing a sponsorship that you might get more sponsorships out of it. And then also consider the cost, like I mentioned in the last couple of slides. It's important you know how much it's going to cost you to know what your full financial plan looks like. So I suggest everyone go and do a return on investment analysis before stepping into anything that costs money. A return on investment analysis is something that all major businesses do to make sure that when they're investing money into any kind of an operation, or in this case a fundraiser, that it truly does make sense. You need to make the numbers make sense before you step into it. So a very simple return on investment calculation is you take the gain from your investment, so in this case how much you're doing this year, or you expect to do this year versus last year, minus the cost of the investment, and then you divide it by the cost of the investment. So when you do that calculation, if your ROI equals 1, you're breaking even. So the money you're putting into the new way of doing things isn't going to get you any more fundraising dollars than you did last year. If that's the case, you might want to look at any other potential reasons you would want to do an online campaign. Maybe it's for helping your volunteers. Maybe it's for just making it easier. But that's when you really want to consider, maybe wait another year until you've got your plan in place. If the ROI equals less than 1, it is negative, I would suggest you hold off and don't do an online campaign. More than likely, when you do this return on investment analysis, you will see a positive ROI. That's anything above 1. So if you're seeing a positive ROI, which means your investment is paying off, then I would suggest moving forward in those cases. So here's an example of an ROI calculation. So using a walkathon as an example. So if you're expecting this year to get $30,000 versus last year $20,000, and the cost of online fundraising is $2,000, and these are just round numbers to make it easy. Your calculation would go like this. The ROI equals 10,000, which is the difference from this year to last year, minus 2,000, the cost, divided by the cost. In this case, your ROI is 4, which means it's very strong, and it's highly likely you're going to make more money doing it this way. In this case, you'll make $8,000 more than you did the year before if your calculations are correct. So assuming that that ROI and the financial analysis shows you that you're going to do better on online fundraising and you want to move forward, the next step is really to define your volunteer roles, because you will need a different set of volunteers or a different set of skills to do a fundraiser online than you would have to do it offline. So consider, first of all, the website administration. Online fundraising means that you're going to need to build a website. The great news is that there are tools out there available that make it relatively simple to do. But you do need someone who has some know-how and who's comfortable working with building a website to be your what we'll call developer. And then you need maybe that same person or someone else to manage maintenance as you add things to your website either before or during the walkathon campaign. You will need to add things and have someone who's available and someone who has the know-how to do it on the website. Also for finance and reporting, you probably already have a treasurer. You want to talk to them first because their job will get a little bit more intense as the walkathon comes up on an online basis. They'll still be processing transactions, but hopefully not as many by check. So someone who will do payment reconciliations. So if you opt to allow a donor to make a donation online using a check, that donor has to process the transaction online and send in the check. Your finance person will need to take those checks and reconcile them in the reporting system to make sure it shows the transaction complete and make sure it shows that that check is actually received. So that's pretty important. Also, you may need to do offline pledge entry. You're still going to have people walking around and getting donations. You might still have a pledge form. In that case, you you will still need to enter them. My hope is that you can have the parents or the participants enter those. It's easy to do using Digi, but if they don't and you get paper forms, this finance person is going to need to work on that themselves. And of course, you want someone who can just extract these reports from the online platform, which is pretty simple to do, and then get you the list of registrations and the list of payments and the list of pledges that have been made at any given time. It's actually really fun to see your progress. So also, once you've got these, I'll call them backbone position skills, you need marketers. You hopefully already have identified those for past events. But online fundraising is such a great tool, but if you haven't done it before, you really need to get in there and tell everybody the benefits of doing this online and get them excited. So I suggest focusing your marketers on the teachers and the administrators to get them excited about the campaign. And then also parents. Really focus the message on parents, how easy this will be, and really make sure that they're getting their questions answered and get them excited about doing this online and blasting the world with their requests to support their kid. So I've gone through most of the stuff about preparing to go online. I'm going to pause right here and go over to Carrie and see if we have any questions at this point.